It's really good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a really long time. I'm trying to remember. I feel like the last time I saw you was like battalion headquarters. I ran into you on a sidewalk. I think that was maybe the last time I think I saw you ever.
Oh
I was
wow.
getting out. I think it's been a long time. Um, you just want to share a little bit what you did, make an introduction of who you are and what you did in the army.
Yeah. So I'm Justice Mayo. I did ROTC at Oregon State University and immediately received a commission upon graduation, and went to IBOLC at Fort Benning in 2012, finishing up um, school there, and then reporting to Fort Polk, Louisiana, with third. Well, it was Fourth Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, and um, my time there. Obviously, I was the rifle platoon leader for 2nd Platoon, Creek Company of 2-4 Infantry Battalion. And that was, to this day, the best time of my life. I tell people that all the time. It is truly the best time. They're like, okay, what did you do? And I tell them what they did. And they're like, well, that doesn't seem like that should be the best time of your life. I'm like, I know. It was, though. It really was. And then when I tell them I was fortunate to get the position, they're like, fortunate? What? That doesn't make sense. It's like, I guess you wouldn't know unless you were in the Army. Um, but after my time with Creek Company, I, I returned back early and then took command of what was left of Creek Company and Alpha Company. And that was about 70 or 80 soldiers. And then I just kind of kept order and discipline there while supplementing some of the soldiers and sending them to backfill positions that were getting removed from forward. That was fun. It was Rear D, um, and that is a struggle in and of itself because it's like herding cats. But my job was really to identify and select soldiers that were mentally and physically prepared to backfill the forward, and that was a lot of fun. I had command authority, and um, I had a good NCO that I worked with. Then beyond that, I went to go work in the S3 as an assistant, managing the calendar for the battalion and the battalion commander. That was a fun job, a difficult job to go from what I was doing to that, and then trying to care as much as I did. For
What's
having
It's
fun.
tough. Just from talking to some officers now, I can't get over like how difficult some of the tasks that you all have to do. Like one day you're leading men in combat, and then the next thing you're given an assignment, and you have to go right into it and do it. I understood. I talked to Captain Lewis, I think at the time, and then Lieutenant Adams became Captain Adams, and it's just the tough thing about being an officer is all the admin side, right? It's not
Oh
always the pretty job,
no,
and if you get
no, it's
stuck with
not.
it, you got to do it.
Yep, and there's a reason for it, and it makes you. It does. It has its purpose, but it is difficult to shift gears and go from carrying about 30, 34 guys while deployed to a an Excel spreadsheet or a schedule, and making sure that the colors match what they're supposed to match for the battalion commander so that he doesn't miss something important for himself, and to
Yeah,
actually like put in the effort and care about that.
yeah, it's funny. I think there's one thing that people don't realize. I guess as enlisted, that we kind of have it lucky that, I mean, if you're enlisted, right, you get to keep having the funds, all the fun jobs, the whole time. And like I think Captain Adams shared with me a little bit. He kind of decided to get out because there's not much future in an officer for the fun jobs past like captain or major. Like, and then it's all staff time. It's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
not everybody wants to do that. That's a
exactly.
tough job.
Yeah, it is. It is. You,
I
you
mean,
have to like rearrange your mental priorities, but it still serves a purpose and accomplishes
oh yeah,
a mission. And you have to do some mental gymnastics to get yourself there.
oh yeah. I always think of like Band of Brothers, right? And Major Winners, right? Or when he gets promoted, he really wants to. I can't remember. He fired the captain, right? He's like he wanted to go and lead those guys, and then the colonel's like, "You can't do that. You're the battalion commander." And he's like, he had to assign a new captain to it, and I was just like, that it's tough. I'm like, I don't know how I could do that. Like, just keep wanting to go out. I mean, eventually, I guess you become a general, but I mean, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
anyway, so how long did you end up being in active duty?
Active duty, full 8 years. So I got out December 31st of 2019 from active duty and immediately reported to the Texas National Guard and was with them for 2 years. And upon reporting, I was pretty much offered an ADOS position immediately to serve as their Division G6 OIC, which is in charge of communications for the 36th Infantry Division. It was a great opportunity, and COVID just hit, so I took the ADOS orders, which is basically active duty temporarily for the period of time where the primary active duty officer that would have been holding that seat prepared for deployment and then deployed. So again, I was rear D on this, and I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to get in a bunch of gym time. It's going to be chill. But with COVID and the border mission and rolling out Office 365 as the Division G6, because I don't know if you know about that, but we rolled out Office 365 just 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so everyone got a new email. So we had, what was it, us.army.mil or at mail.mil, right? And now it's at army.mil. And so I had to get a bunch of people who did not care and thought this was a nuisance to register for online accounts.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun though. Getting beat up by the chief of staff. She's like, "Where are the numbers at?" But what I did, what's nice about coming from the infantry world, it was 36th Infantry Division. So infantry has a different language, and they don't want to waste time. And if you can break it down to really as simple as possible with the most least amount of fluff, even if it's imagery or whatever, reduce it. And one of the things that I did was take the 4-page how-to that the General Army sent out, and I broke it down to 1 page, and I think it was like 7 steps. And then I blasted that out to the brigades, and along with having over-the-phone conversations with like majors or captains to make them see how stupid easy it was. And then after they got it, then they trickled it down and down and down. And we ended up getting the most account activations, like per soldier, percentage wise, more so than any other National Guard division.
It's awesome because like whenever I talk to a lot of former infantry guys, and obviously you and I have an infantry bias, but I think infantrymen there's always that joke that there's not much for us to do when we get out of the army, but really I think that's wrong. I think like infantry guys we're the best problem solvers. We just do tasks and we have to figure it out because we know like in the infantry, you got to do it, whatever you're asked to do. So the skill translates to the civilian life. Like I'm just like I don't complain. Like I'm just I get if I get a bad task, I'm like ugh, But we just problem solve, and I work well under pressure. I didn't even realize it. Like stress, everyone has stress, but for me, it's just not as bad. And it's the infantry. Honestly,
Yeah.
I wish I could figure out how to put this on a resume. Like, you know, trust me,
Yes,
you
you're
want an
not.
infantry guy, and I think every company, every organization should have one former grunt in there. Because I mean, that guy's gonna get shit done.
Yes, yes, and like certain taskings that will come down that I want to say this delicately. The a pencil paper pusher will see as like daunting might be like exactly what the infantryman wants. Like so we have this emergency situation. There's been a flood or whatever, and we need somebody to go take communications equipment and set it up in this area. Like we're not quite sure how or where you're going to sleep. We'll try to get food, and the infantry guy is going to be like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Sure.
Where do you want me to go? Whereas
Yeah.
someone who hasn't been in those extreme situations might be like, oh, start being concerned about the physical aspect of it, where an infantryman, like, you guys we all slept on the ground on a puss pad or
Yeah.
edit a sleeping pad.
Yeah. Sometimes spooning.
Yes, a lot of times spooning. If you were at the apex of a of a patrol base, you were spooning your buddy for sure.
Yeah. And you wanted the middle. The middle was the best,
Exactly.
warmest part.
Yeah. Whoever's holding the 240 in the middle, two guys on the edge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Side by
It's
side,
the
nut
best.
to butt.
Yeah. It's the best part.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you talked about you had to transition out. Luckily, you got a little time in the guard time. But you told me you're doing IT technically, right?
Yes.
What made you get into that, or how'd you know that was a career for you?
So when I was an OCS instructor at Fort Benning, a MIPR message came across asking, I think they wanted infantry, armor, and artillery as signal officers, because they were short signal officers. And I took it as an opportunity because I was seeing myself getting out of the military in the future, and I thought that would be a good option for work outside in the civilian community. So, and in addition to that, I can bring the infantry language into another branch that's hurting, because that signal officers get yelled at all the time from infantry battalion commanders yelling, "Sigo, like, get this FM like radio working," or "Why isn't my computer up? Why don't I can't I access this?" So they're always getting yelled at. And I remember seeing our S6 at Fort Polk when I was on staff just get beat up all the time. And I knew that he was actually doing a good job, and I knew that he was the best battalion S6 in the brigade. And he eventually left. So I'm like, man, that's not good. Like, there's something wrong with the signal community. I don't understand what's going on. So after seeing him, I'm like, yeah, I could go help the situation, because I could push back on those strong commanders. So when I switched over, it was a lot of stuff. I was like the dumbest guy in the room at Signal Captain's Career Course when it came to signal stuff. But when it came to tactics and infantry, it was like, hey, Justice, like, what would you do? So it was a good transition. And I learned a lot. I applied it when I got to Fort Lewis with 2-3, and we took.
Wait, you went from Polk to Benning to Lewis?
Yep, I went from Polk to Benning to Fort Gordon shortly for SCCC, and then up to Fort Lewis for an assignment there as a battalion S6 for the 2-3 infantry of 1-2 SBCT.
And you said you went to college in Oregon, right? So you're kind of familiar with that
Yes.
area.
Yep.
Okay, nice. I'm actually in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, if you know where that is. It's kind of, you know where Spokane, Washington is?
Yes.
It's right next to Spokane on the Idaho side.
Oh, yeah, nice. And like, I was in Yakima Training Center there, and that's where I shined as a battalion S6.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty familiar because Fort Lewis is near Tacoma, right? Near Tacoma,
Yeah.
and then there's Washington's crazy because like Yakima isn't Yakima it looks almost deserty, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's weird. Yeah. You don't expect it. You don't expect it. So that's, of course, the Army always finds the shittiest locations to do their training centers, right?
Yes. Yes. They find the worst area. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody's trying to creep in and live around that area. And there's no trees. It's so dead. It looks like Afghanistan. In the dead spots. There was no valleys that had wadis with nice greenery like we saw in Afghanistan. But the rest of the like hillside where it's just like rock and brown and dry and dead, that's what Yakima is, and that's why it's a good training area for strikers, because they can travel. It's a striker type environment. It's perfect.
Yeah. So So that's kind of, yeah, you went from a, light infantry unit to then to a mechanized unit. That's, I'm curious, like, so I guess you weren't an infantry PL then, but you were S6, but you get to be in a whole different unit.
Yes.
What's the difference between a light infantry and a mechanized unit that you saw? Like,
Well, personally, maybe it's because where I started, but I prefer light. Um, those big steel hunks of metal are, um, I don't like them. Uh, let's just put it that way.
well, I can
The
imagine. I mean, there's you have to be an infantry guy, and then you also have to be a mechanic because they probably have to get beaten to submission.
Yeah, and they're torn between taking care of themselves and their their soldiers, and then taking care of this big piece of super heavy. They're super heavy. They're
Expensive.
expensive to move them around. To employ them correctly, it is a challenge. Um, but the guys up there, uh, they they took it in stride. But they are, I would say, striker soldiers are infantrymen at heart. They really are. They are not armor guys. They see the striker as a nuisance, um, and they kind of avoid it. And you almost need a mix of both. If I could make a decision, it would probably be mix armor personnel into those striker units, so you have people who are dedicated to taking care of the machine, and then guys who basically ride in the back until they're told to get out. Yeah. What else about the strikers? Obviously, they move faster. So on the S6 side, I had to be good about employing FM comms and identifying retrans sites for FM communications. FM communications are still king of communications. All other forms are not as reliable. And I had 3 teams, and I was able to, because I could predict where the battalion commander would generally want to move his companies, I was able to employ those retrans sites very well. And they gave me a speed laptop. Speed laptop basically is a electronic version maps of the area that gives elevation and everything, and I can test where a retrans site, how it would be effective in certain areas. And for 28 days, I had to have foresight on where the battalion commander would kind of move his guys in phase, which wasn't too hard because there's only so many places you can go, and my comms, reach out 20 kilometers. So it wasn't that difficult. And you just look for high points. There was a time there though that I told my major that if we were deployed, I'm like, I would not send up my retrans sites without a infantry squad, because my retrans sites, and they're like 2 or 3 guys, they'd get wiped if anybody rolled up on them. Like, oh, they got to be pulling security. I'm like, I know, I got you. I understand infantry guys and what they're itching to do, and that would be a bitch task, but you'd have to fire me to send up my retrans sites up there alone if we were deployed. You'd have to
But bitch task, that's what we specialize in.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you could pair it with observation posts, because I'm always putting retrans sites up on hills. Therefore, you could send your scout. I don't care if it's a scout squad. Put somebody up there to secure my guys, because they are very knowledgeable. And here's the difference between infantrymen and signaliers. Signaliers and infantrymen, because their soldiers are similar in the sense of, like, you've got everybody who are patriots, and in a bad situation, they see the army as an out to get out of wherever they are. But the personality difference between infantrymen and signaliers, they're different. Sometimes infantrymen can look at signaliers and think, oh, they're weak, they're soft, they're quiet, but they are very smart and very knowledgeable. And so I had to be an infantryman that looked out for the interests of the signalers and pushed back when basically the infantryman would be like, just make it work. Just make it work. And it's like, and then I had to translate from the signalers because they're like, you can yell at me all you want. Like, we are trying to connect to the satellites and this hill is blocking us. Unless you want to pick up this entire talk and move it like 2 kilometers, we're going to continue to have this issue. And I can't tell you exactly when we're going to get locked on to the satellite. So and then my battalion commander would be like, so what's the time? How much longer does it take? And my signaler told me, he's like an E4. He's like, sir, I don't know. And I'm like, and then I went to the battalion commander. I'm like, it's going to take 4 hours. In my mind, I'm like, I have no idea how long it's going to take. But for the battalion commander to put peace into his heart, I'm like, 4 hours. Did we eventually get it connected? Yes. But I had no idea. And so I had to be the cushion between the enlisted signalers who were quiet generally and the, infantry type who are like, let's get it done. Let's go. What's the holdup? Just smash it in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you were talking about that, and it sounds like maybe this last assignment you had a little bit more interaction with the enlisted. I feel like we were talking on the phone kind of about this. It's kind of weird. Like a junior enlisted doesn't really have, especially in the infantry, doesn't really have much interaction with a platoon leader. Obviously fraternization. Right. So, but it's kind of weird now that I think about it, and I'm an adult and older. I'm like, your officer, I feel like he's going to lead you in combat. You should have some kind of like personal, I don't know, some kind of personal experience with them, a little bit, level of trust. But we didn't really, like I'm saying, I obviously served with you, but I didn't really know you. That's the crazy thing to think about, because we just, you'd be like, how you doing, Gillum? Good, sir. That's it. That was our day.
Yeah.
But and now you're talking about with the signal, you're working with these dudes day to day.
Yes.
So it was more than just good, sir. Yes, sir. You guys were problem solving together.
Yeah, and I had to rely on them for things that I did not know, because even as a signal officer, we get taught like generalizations, but as far as like the computer works with the buttons and the STT and the TCN, if you give me a STT and a JNN or TCN, I'm going to be like, where is my 25 Sierra and where is my 25 November? Because I have no clue like where to start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and then when it came to the infantry platoon, think about it this way. Your team leader, how much did your team leader know you?
I mean, not much. Like I said, they just, I feel like my team. Oh, my team leader. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about platoon leader. Team leader. Yeah. Very close. Cause your team leader, the guy you talk to every day, cleans your, inspects your room. So very
intimate relationship. Right.
Yeah. Jones was my team leader.
Exactly. Yep. And you'll know that I had a little bit more interactions with Jones than the soldiers, right? And then back that up even more when it came to the squad leaders, right? Now, when you talk about squad leaders aren't necessarily going to want you getting too close to their soldiers. And you could probably kind of understand why it's their squad, right? And their team leaders, and they want to be able to lead them and have them underneath them. Now, if you talk to squad leaders, we had more interactions, and then Sergeant Bontrager even, closer. But even then, there does have to be some level of professional distance, just because of the role of each, right? So as the PL, I am focused on meeting the commander's intent and putting that as a priority. And then the tension comes with the same echelon, platoon sergeant being married to the PL, creating the tension between, like, I understand you want to do that mission, but here's what we got going on in our platoon and our Joes. And there should be a natural, like, I understand what you want to do, sir, but you need to consider this, this, and this. And even with that, then it's like, okay, when you go outside the wire, then there has to be difficult decisions to be made. Whereas you want the platoon sergeant to be kind of putting tension on the PL to look out for the soldiers. That's what he's there for, right? And he's going to know the ins and outs of like, okay, who's the better squad leader for this type of mission? Who he knows what soldiers are doing what in what team. Whereas I'm focused on like timeline, schedule, and meeting the commander's intent and accomplishing the mission. So it's just, and if you start to get too close, relationally with a soldier, then it can alter and affect the decisions that are going to be made to meet the mission. Does that make sense?
It's true. You have to accomplish that mission, but if you had some kind of you're saying if you had some kind of personal relationship, that could taint the process because your job was to have no relationship because you had to accomplish that mission. But say
Right.
if we were friends, you'd be like, you know what? I don't want to send Gillum on this mission because I like him the best and he could get hurt or something like that. I get it. Yeah.
Bingo. And it's not like I didn't think about you guys.
Oh yeah.
It was like a professional distance. There was one time, and I will say I've even said this in my OCS classes to upcoming PLs. I think I was overly cautious sometimes with gaining relationships with the NCOs and soldiers. There was this opportunity for me to go to Mudfest, and I'm like, "What's Mudfest?" And Mudfest, I don't know if did you ever go?
No, I didn't. I didn't go,
Okay.
but I heard about it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the Spartan race, right? It's kind of like a Spartan race.
No, Mudfest was like people bring their 4-wheelers and 4x4 trucks, like mudding in Louisiana and drinking and driving, but it's off post, or it's not off post, it's on private property, so therefore people are allowed to like drink and drive. And I remember thinking like, yeah, I kind of want to go, but that's freaky. Like, what if something bad happens and I'm there? And I'm like, oh, it freaked me out. So out of fear, I didn't go. But looking back, I should have been disciplined to go and then give myself like a timeline, like at least show face, say hello, enjoy maybe a beer, and then roll out after like an hour, no more than 2 hours,
Yeah.
And I wish I would have done that, and I would share that at my classes at OCS. It's like, and my mantra would be like, go to Mudfest, but have a plan to show up, see everyone, talk to them, and leave. And give them the time that they need as soldiers to decompress, because you don't want to be in their face all the time. As the PL, do you want me to be coming and hanging out at the barracks?
No.
You guys are doing shenanigans. Yeah. You have 18-year-olds that are just showing up to the unit, and you want to have your fun time with them, and you want to drink and have a good time. Like I remember and we know you do all that stuff, and we can't necessarily participate. Because of the job that we're doing, we need to hold that position. And so you guys kind of have that somewhat of respect and a little bit of fear and like, I'm not really sure about that guy type thought.
Well, as it should be, and you're the officer, so of course you have the highest standard to follow. So yeah.
And that was the other thing. I wanted to be, I had to do everything to the best of my ability, because how can I ask anyone else to do that if I'm not?
Yeah.
So, given the left and right boundaries of what I was allowed to do, I tried to do that to the best of my ability.
Yeah. No, it's kind of cool to. I didn't really think about it, and then I heard your perspective on it, and yeah, it all makes a lot of sense to me. It's just weird. It must have been tough for you because you really only had you were forced friends, right? You're like show up and you're like, all right, where are the officers at? There's 8 other lieutenants, and well, those are my friends.
Yeah, and a lot of times we didn't get to see each other. Like when we were deployed, I think I didn't really see hardly any lieutenants. Like when we were out there, we just had the team leader, and the team leader, captain, SF guy, he doesn't necessarily want to like hang out with me. So it was kind of lonely, like,
Jeez, that's awful.
um,
Actually, that's awful because you were required to be a robot. That's insane. And on deployment, your circle of friends got even smaller. You couldn't be friends with anyone. That's insane.
yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
it, yeah, that,
Because like
yeah,
I think one of the best things about being enlisted that I miss is the camaraderie, right? Like the it was the same thing on deployment. You come in and hey, who wants to work out? And there'd be like 3 or 4 dudes that just want to, or same thing when you're back in garrison in the barracks. You're like, hey, anybody want to go out to dinner? Someone will be like, yeah, sure. You'd always have some kind of friends,
yeah,
but it wasn't the same with you. I mean, that's I would have gone crazy. You're a better man than I am.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there, yeah, to try to keep a professional, like, and yeah, I mean, granted, I did connect with, you know, the squad leaders and some guys on occasion, but yeah, I always had to save face, so to speak.
Yeah,
And then when we were back in garrison, a lot of the lieutenants hang out. A group of lieutenants, like, we would hang out and it'd be fun, and we could do things obviously amongst each other that are similar to what you guys do. It wasn't like all that much different. It might be slightly different, but we were in our young 20s too, so
yeah.
we were doing a lot of the similar things.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just in a smaller circle. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
Sir, if you don't mind me asking, what about you said in the Texas National Guard, did you have to go on the border at all?
No, I didn't. But I would support the communications equipment. Sometimes they'd use we'd sign out these cell phones that I didn't have to do too much, but tracking and like movements, we would have similar to the Blue Force tracker. We'd track our soldiers when they moved to like Washington, D.C., when they helped out with that mission. I helped get them in contact with the Tennessee National Guard so that we could have a place to stop to have the soldiers bed down, shower, shave, and then move on to Washington, D.C. And it was awesome. Tennessee National Guard set up cots in their bay, and someone stayed up late. I think they showed up past midnight. They showed up around like 1 a.m., came in, slept, I want to say just 7 hours, got back in the vehicles and kept going on to Washington, D.C. I didn't go with them, but I just Googled Tennessee National Guard, tried to find the local thing that was along the route that they'd be traveling on, and then I just cold called him. And he's like, I'm sorry, who is this? I'm like, this is so-and-so from the Texas National Guard, and we have guys traveling across the border, or not traveling across the country, and they were aware of the situation too, because they had to provide soldiers as well, so it was a very easy thing to communicate. And what's funny is, like, I called from the bottom down, and then our brigade or our division leadership called from the top up. And so when the communication finally got to the guy on the ground, he's like, oh yeah, we already know, we talked to Captain Mayo, and we're getting it rolling. They're like, who? Captain Mayo. And then Colonel Walls came over to be like, hey, we got a high-speed captain over here. And I'm like, I used Google.
Google is amazing.
Yeah.
I solve everything with Google. Someone's like, how do you like? I gotta tell you this funny story. Since you're IT, you'll probably appreciate this. But there's in one of my jobs, there was like a sign, right? A TV screen they use for a sign, and they put a laptop in the ceiling to connect it to the TV screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, so and you would remote log into that laptop in the ceiling to control the sign. And I was like, okay, hold on. There's no way that is how this is done. And I just typed into Google, and I'm like, oh, signage software, cool. Smart TV, oh, you can get a Fire Stick, plug it into the back, and then boom, you're up and running. And to this day, I still love that story because I remember I was like, hey, they were asking if who needs new laptops, and I was like, well, if you're looking for a laptop, I think there's still one in the ceiling. You guys might have forgot about.
Nice.
Like,
Well, that's one way to solve
oh
a problem.
yeah, they didn't like me. But yeah, it's fun though. Some of it, I gotta be genuine because, like, in the military, we're kind of tough on each other. So I make those tough jokes sometimes, and it's not. Sometimes it doesn't go over that well. Like I gotta be
It's
nicer.
beautiful. It's beautiful. The jokes that are made in the military. When I tell people, oh yeah, the jokes get pretty rough, and they're like, yeah, it gets pretty rough over here too. I'm like, just mix like the most far corners of society along with death and
Dark humor.
Oh man, it's so funny. Some of the funniest people all of the funniest people I've met who are not comedians were in the military. There are some that, oh man, remember when we were in that tent? Oh, this is kind of, we were doing JRTC like rotation. We were in that huge tent. The entire company was sleeping in one tent. And then,
yeah.
I forget what they weren't in our platoon, but there were two guys that were like always hanging out together, right? And we were bedding down, and like all the guys were in there, and then they were looking at each other, and you guys were egging, like everybody was egging them on, and then they kissed each other in front of the. Do you remember that?
No, I'm glad I don't remember that.
It was.
I remember that rotation though.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, they're not. They weren't gay, but they kissed each other in front of the whole company, and it was really
just
funny.
To be funny. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
they were playing. They were playing chicken.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do. Oh my gosh, I do remember that.
Yeah.
It's just that's the type of stuff that was our like every day. We would just do dumb stuff in between doing our job because there was a boredom factor. Like especially in the enlisted side, we dealt with a lot of boredom. So I think that's what we were always so funny because we just had to cope. We had to have a coping mechanism of dealing with the boredom sometimes. And that's just kind of part of it. I remember that rotation. One of my craziest stories that I remember from that rotation was when we did that overnight mission, right, against Geronimo, where we had to we had to defend our cop. And I was on a Humvee out with Jones, and I can't remember who was out with us, but I remember
you
it was
were a gunner,
Jones.
right?
I was the gunner.
Yep.
But I remember like we were up, no sleep, and on the way back, they're like, Captain Lewis was like, "All right, guys, let's get back safe." And I'm the driver, and Jones is like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." I start driving back, and I am tired as fuck. And I gave myself, they say giving the invisible man head. I was like, boop, and I bounced up. I look over at Jones, and he's doing the same thing, and I was like,
oh no.
I'm like, holy fuck, like. I'm like, okay, I got to stay awake. So I grabbed, the only thing I could do, I was like, I got to move something to keep myself awake. I grabbed a handful of sunflower seeds and just started crunching on them. I was like, this will keep myself. And that's the only way I could keep myself awake. Cause I was like, there's 5 guys in here. That was one of the wildest things.
Oh man. I remember this one time coming back from the range. That's not that. I mean, I think that happens to everybody, but Hunges was my driver, right? And there was a time we were coming back from range, and I tell him like, Hunges, I don't know. And I was the TC, right? We were coming back, and I'm like, and it wasn't that very far. It wasn't that far. I want to say it was like 9 miles, but I'm like, Hunges, you have to get us back. And like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, sir, I'm good. Like, he seemed clear. I think he had, I don't know, I want to say maybe NOS energy, or he had an energy drink, and he was clear-minded. And I was like, please, like, and I'm sure he's like, fucking PL, like, fucking lieutenant. And I just like could not stay awake. And Hunges, man, he was a great RTO. Hunges could ruck anything. Oh my goodness. Like I just remember him being like 4'11", right? And whenever I would have OCS candidates start to fall back on a ruck, I had like no sympathy for them. None
Because you knew
at
hunges.
all. Oh, hundreds. You hand him anything, he's he's keeping up. And there was just something about Hundreds where he was nice, he was kind, but he's like, you didn't want to I don't know. He was so strong minded. He was so strong minded. I mean, all you guys were. What is it, Paz Valley? Paz Valley, I was witnessing him one time. What did he do? He was fighting with um our medic, and he broke his headset out of spite, just because he didn't say he could have it. And I was just so like, Paz Valley. He's a tough guy too. He doesn't look like it, but Paz Valley was a tough guy. There were
Angry dude, little angry dude.
a little angry dude, yeah, but man, oh man, I loved it all. I didn't that Office quote where Andy's like, I wish you knew when you were in the good times that you were in the good times. Like, those were the good times. Like, going to Fort AP Hill, Virginia was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Like,
The training was the fun times.
yeah.
Like, because that's when you got to do the cool guy shit. Like when we got to be infantry, when we got to that, I love the training. You'd go out using night vision. You get to drive using night vision. It was fun. It's like playing a video game live. That was and then all the
Yes.
funny shit happens where you just can't explain to someone the shenanigans that we would do.
Yeah.
And
The
all the
awesomeness.
training. Yeah. This is fun. Yeah. Poor AP Hill was a really good memory. I remember we did 2 weeks of training there, and then we got to do Washington, DC. And that was cool. I had never seen the Capitol before. And I remember this was our plan. We were like, it was also Cinco de Mayo. So we were like, all right, we've got 8 hours. I think we had 8 hours or 6 hours, right? So here's our plan. We're going to run and see as many monuments and museums as we can for 4 hours. And then the other 4 hours, we're going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. So then we ran down, saw White House, saw every single memorial we could, went through museums, and then we're like, all right, Cinco de Mayo, let's go get margaritas.
Yes. Yes, that is awesome. Okay. And so in our morning meeting back at Fort Polk, we were going over our plan to go to AP Virginia and do training and everything. And so I just Google it where it's at, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like only 4 hours from Washington, D.C. And being from the West Coast, Washington, D.C. to me at this point, because I was born and raised in Oregon, went to Oregon State. Oregon State's only an hour and a half from where I was born. And when I was in high school, I've only flown on a plane once. I didn't go as far east. The farthest east I had ever traveled was Minnesota. So when we were at Fort Polk, saying we were going to go to Fort AP Hill, Virginia, I looked at it on a map and I saw Washington, D.C. in close proximity. I'm like, 4 hours? So I brought up in the morning meeting, like, sir, to Captain Lewis, I'm like, we're going to be 4 hours from the capital of our country, and we're going to have all these guys. We're going to deploy soon. Like, I've never been to Washington, D.C. I'm sure there's plenty of the guys that have never been to Washington, D.C. Could we go there? Like, I would love to go before deployment. I mean, it's kind of like a bucket list item, and we're going to deploy in June. And everybody in that meeting, it was only platoon sergeants, PLs, and XO and first sergeant and commander were there. And I want to say like half of them, I remember, were kind of like, he's got a point, and Captain Lewis kind of kept a good poker face. He's like, well, we can look into that. And then came to be.
Nice.
Something. Yeah.
So it was
And
you. It was you. That you made it all happen. That's cool. Because
I
I
pushed the
never got to
ball in
see
that
the kid.
direction. Yeah.
No, that was a really cool experience. Because I'm kind of similar to you. I had never been anywhere. I've never been in New England area. I've never been to New York City.
Yeah.
Um, that was the furthest east I'd ever gone to. I grew up in Colorado, so
That's right. I remember that.
yeah. So yeah, it was a really cool experience to have that. It was a bucket list thing, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that training event was so much fun too. I loved doing all the glass house shoots with those guys. Those were so much fun. And I remember I think they had Virginia National Guard come in and play Op 4 for us. I think too.
Yeah.
That was a cool experience.
Yeah, and then I think 82nd were the ones that sent us the helicopters and pilots.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, 82nd Airborne. We got to do the helicopter training. That's the kind of fun stuff that I always think about. Man, getting to fly in helicopters. Like we got to fly in Chinooks, Blackhawks. When we got in country, like I never thought I'd see a Huey, but those are the civilian helicopters that they would fly. They had Hueys, and I was like, "What?" The
Yeah,
Vietnam era helicopters. So it was so much fun to be able to do that.
it was
Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean, you couldn't pay to replicate that again.
yeah,
That's the thing that you get in the military that you don't really ever have the opportunity to do again. I try to tell people like, hey, you should really consider joining, and they're like, no, like I don't want to be told what to do and stuff like that. I'm sorry, but you're going to be told what to do everywhere in life. Doesn't matter
yeah.
who or what you work for. If you're the CEO or home or business owner, you're going to be told what to do either by the market or whatever. Um, but the military provides opportunities for you that you will never be able to replicate. You
It
can't just
does,
get 100 people to show up to do something, and have that environment.
and
Just try to
it
get 100 people to show up and camp outside. Like, it's
yeah,
impossible.
and be able to have all the logistics to it. I think one of the
Yeah.
big things um, that it really helped me prepare for was just facing life. Like it gave me the toughness and ability to know that life is going to keep shitting on me, and I'm just going to have to deal with it and have to face it every day. I mean, I know every day is never going to be easy, and the military I think helped me prepare that. And I'm thankful for it because when I went into college, my grandpa, my whole family is all military, but he always wanted all of his grandkids to get college degrees. So I got free college, but I am telling you right now, I probably would have been, who knows what type of student I would have been before the military. But when I went after there, I didn't think I was smart, sir. And I graduated magna cum laude. And I just worked really hard. I graduated 3.933 GPA. Um,
Whoa.
yep. And I had a chip on my shoulder I was like, I'm gonna work my ass off. And actually what motivated me was the type of students that were surrounded me. And I don't want to bash them too much, but some of these kids just were just no motivation, no work ethic. And I think it just gave me even a bigger chip on my shoulder. And
Yeah.
like it just made me work harder. And I couldn't wait. I was like, I'm gonna be the best at this, do this. But it helped me prepare me for 2021. 2021 was probably the worst year of my life.
Oh,
Just real quick, I won't bore you with all the details, but like I was going through a divorce. I moved from Colorado to Idaho. I got my car broken into. A month later, I got rear-ended. I got COVID. I stabbed my hand.
oh,
Um, I had a awful, the worst year of my life. But the whole time, if it wasn't for I think my faith in God and just that toughness that the military gave me, I would have. I don't think I would have been make it. I would have made it because instead of doing like I think a lot of people probably would have started drinking heavy, whatever. I didn't. I actually didn't drink. I think for 6 months that whole time. Um, I went out and hiked every weekend and just kind of. I think I got myself closer to God too. And, oh, the funny story is I slept in a tent. for 6 weeks. I was homeless, technically. I went to job every day because I had a house in Colorado and I couldn't pay two mortgages at once, right?
Right.
And my parents,
Right.
because of COVID and everything, my parents had hired a contractor and I was going to stay with them, but the contractor went MIA. So they didn't have a place ready. So I stayed in a hunting tent with like a couch inside of it and an air mattress
Oh,
for 6 weeks. And honestly, it was hilarious because I was like, yeah, this is just like deployment. It's, no
yeah.
one at work knew because I would go to the gym in the morning and I'd go shower in the gym after, and I'd go into work, and no one had any idea.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. But what if is there anything you would like to share too about the trials maybe you faced too, and
Yeah.
how the
I mean,
military
and
prepared you for
amen to
that?
that. I will say, um, you, I like so difficult to go through an experience like that. And I had something similar just this past year. Um, not to the extent of a tent for 6 weeks, but to the extent of a camper trailer at a trailer park for 6 months. But it did have air conditioning, it did have plumbing, so I got to see
Nice.
that. But similar to you, it definitely brought me closer to God, and I stopped drinking entirely pretty much in May, because my sister she wanted to stop drinking until her birthday as a means to just get healthier or whatever. And I said, I think I'm gonna use this opportunity to do that too. And it was great. I kind of cleared up my mind, but there was a time where I was kind of feeling down on myself for staying in a trailer park in a trailer. After leaving a a nice home and wife and kids to just living by myself at a trailer park. It is a shot to the pride. Um, yeah, and just staying connected in church and meeting with fellow brothers in Christ on a routine basis. Like, I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that. And my faith has kept me grounded, kept me centered, to where, I didn't fall into a negative downward spiral. And I think being in the military is difficult. It's difficult for the spouse. It's difficult for families. And divorce is pretty common, and it's complex. It's very, very prominent. I wish a sociologist would take on a study, maybe they have, of just relationship issues that come with being in the military. Because on one side, you have it being difficult no matter what.
Yeah.
Then, and there's this side, and it's difficult because of just the time suck, and being assigned, hey, you're going to go to the desert for 28 days. Like, being in the military, that doesn't sound all that bad. It's like, oh yeah, it's a rotation. It's not as bad as like going on a year-long deployment, whatever. But in the civilian world, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like, people will get assigned to go do something for a week, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to go away from my family for 5 days. And I'm like, 5 days?
Yeah.
So we kind of get very, we're used to going away for long periods of time, but that is difficult when you have relationship with someone and they have relationships with people who have a normal life, or a normal, and by normal I mean common marriage, with someone in the civilian sector where they get to see them every day. I think that soldiers, especially coming out of training, because of the way that it's used, makes you feel less than. They beat you down. The military beats down your ego, and then tries to build you up in a certain way, but you still feel like shit. And when you are among a bunch of dudes, and you're attracted to women, if you're around a bunch of dudes all the time, you are just aching for like physical relationship presence, like a woman in general, right? Like
Yeah. Oh
you'll
yeah.
see it's not uncommon to be very attracted to any female that is available and who is nice to you, because you're like, oh wow, I feel like a piece of shit. You're being nice to me and you're attractive. Like you cling on to them
Nice.
like a magnet, you know?
Yeah.
And ignoring certain things that you might not ignore if you weren't so desperate for a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it's maturity too. They say like the male's mind doesn't stop developing, doesn't it develops until like 25, right? That's when you're fully matured, roughly.
Yeah.
And we had to do so much before the age of 25, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think when I was 25, I was just starting to have any sort of wisdom at all. And
That's where wisdom started, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, actually, maybe I had a little bit of common sense at that time, and it just it's crazy to think about. Like, they ask pretty much we're all kids. I mean, think of it. Most squad leaders are probably maybe 25 at
Right.
that time. A lot of them are on average. So we're doing all these crazy things out at a younger age, and then on the flip side, we want to have like regular relationships, regular life, but we're not prepared for that type of thing. And I
Oh,
think
man. Yep.
one thing too, like getting out, like that one connection that we have, we lost it, and then we're having a lot of veterans are having issues. But I think when we get them back together and getting them back into the veteran community, I think that's what's going to help them, because it's just weird. Your civilian friends, I have really good civilian friends, but there's just nothing. There's no words to fathom the type of relationship I have with my former Army buddies. You know what I'm saying? It's that. I'm really excited because do you remember Doc Selwood?
Yes.
Doc Selwood, he started a nonprofit in New Jersey, and they take veterans out hunting.
Oh my goodness.
It's a good idea, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I just think all those types of ideas, getting them together, and are gonna really, that's what's going to make a difference. But
Yes.
well,
100%. There's
yep.
also, I have a buddy who created an 501c. It's called Brotherhood, and it's
Okay.
similar to that. It's more along the lines of fishing trips. It's called Brotherhood.
Nice.
Brotherhood with Christ.
Brotherhood with Christ.
Where veterans are welcomed to come to events and be with other vets. I did one of the events, and we showed up, and we had guys from the Marines, Navy, or whatever, but it was almost like we were immediately at the range. And the conversation quickly was like, oh, yeah, even though we didn't know each other, we did.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be sensitive of your time. It's about an hour.
Yeah.
You can call it good here, but I'll drop the link for that nonprofit. So if anybody's interested and they want to reach out to that organization, you said Brotherhood in Christ?
Yep. Brotherhood with Christ. Yeah.
Brotherhood with Christ. All right. Well, there it is. Well, sir, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, bye.